Listen, Harry Symeou, I mean, 3 points are 3 points at the end of the day, isn't it? And you've gone to Old Trafford and managed to win there. It's never an easy task. Well, I say that, but, it was a rejuvenated Manchester United as well, with some new signings and some optimism. And Arsenal, despite not really being at the races, managed to get over the line by being Corners FC and Stoke City once again. So, overall, you must be not amazed with the performance, but happy with the result.
Yeah, really happy with the result. I mean, you looked at that fixture going into the season and you were worried about it as an Arsenal fan. It's not the start that you want, a trip to Old Trafford, when you're still trying to fine-tune things and get yourselves up to speed. It's a place that historically Arsenal haven't been very good at. So, of course, there was a bit of concern going into the game. Look, Arsenal didn't play great. Let's not pretend that the case was anything otherwise. They were really, really poor in certain departments, didn't pack a punch in attack. Even defensively, at times in the first half especially, looked much more vulnerable than we've come to expect. But ultimately, they got the result. It doesn't matter how it's come, by hook or by crook, they've got over the line. They've got 3 points on the board, haven't lost ground on Liverpool or Manchester City, who both had much better fixtures on paper in terms of their openers. I know everybody plays everybody, but you want to stay in the hunt. You want to stay in the race. And, I'm pleased from an Arsenal perspective, but you can be pleased without being under the illusion that everything is perfect and without falling into this false sense of security. There's work to be done.
Out of all the performances, though, you've got to admit, I think the most concerning one would have been that of Viktor Gyokeres on his debut.
I disagree.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Who would you say then?
The most concerning performance, I would say, it wasn't the worst performance. I think Declan Rice had a stinker. I think Martin Zubimendi struggled to be involved in the game. I think Calafiori, yes, scores a goal, but defensively leaves us looking really vulnerable. I think Martinelli was probably the most underwhelming Arsenal performer on the pitch. So I don't like... people will say that Gyökeres was concerning because he's coming with all this hype and expectation, and you're expecting him to kind of be that difference maker and be the final piece.
And he had no shots. He had 4 completed passes.
Yeah,
and 22 touches in the entire game.
In an hour, yeah. But you got to service him. If you don't serve him the ball, what do you expect to happen? If you watch him closely, he made the right runs. He ran into the channels. He pinned the centre-halves on a few occasions, showed that physically he's up to it. But in terms of sharpness, he's not quite there. He was a bit behind in terms of pre-season because he was doing an Alexander Isak and didn't want to train while he was waiting for the move to go through. It's not a major worry for me. If we're talking this in this same tone in a month's time, then maybe we can have a conversation about it, but I'm not concerned.
Yeah, I feel like as well, it was overall it was a collectively poor performance from Arsenal. And you do make a good point there about the service and the fact that Saka wasn't really at the races, Martinelli wasn't really at the races. And I thought overall, as a game for a centre-forward, it must have been full of frustration for Gyökeres, because all he was really having to do was, like you say, pin the centre-half, try and win long balls. There wasn't really a chance for him to show himself off in the way that he would have liked to. And actually, to be fair to Arsenal, I made the joke about them being Corners FC, and once again they're relying on set pieces. But what you might find this season is, if that front three isn't firing, they can rely on that, and it's a different way to score. It's not the only way they can score.
Yeah, no, it's not. And we know that Arsenal have been really kind of efficient from set-piece situations for quite some time now. It shouldn't surprise anybody. People know what they're going to do in terms of trying to, in terms of trying to limit the goalkeeper's capacity to come out and get the ball. They did a really good job, and it was quite an easy job actually on Bayindir, who was nowhere near strong enough. And there's variation to those set-piece routines as well. If you watch the way Arsenal set up just before Declan Rice delivers the ball, it's different to what we've become accustomed to. So that tells me they're constantly evolving those routines, and it's a weapon. And people don't like it, and Arsenal fans in the past didn't like it when it was used against us. But it is part and parcel of the game. We're a big, powerful, physical team. Why not use it to our advantage? Yeah,
absolutely. A bit of a shocker there from Bayindir. What did you make of Manchester United overall, though? Because as much as they didn't win, I did think that there was signs of some improvement. The only thing I would say, though, Harry, is when you look at the record for Amorim now, and this is actually quite astonishing, really, he has got almost the same record that Steve McLaren had at Newcastle. 28 games, 15 losses. I think McLaren had 16. On paper, it's not really good enough. The only thing you could say to that, though, is he's had a summer now. It's the start of a new season. And I thought that especially the new signings from Manchester United showed that there were signs of improvement and that they were a bit unlucky not to get anything out of the game.
Yeah, they will feel unlucky. You know, they've brought their striker in. Benjamin Sesko wasn't fit enough to start the game yesterday, but he'll give them a focal point. I thought Cunha and Mbeumo were really good. Man United were better. And that's all you can ask for, I think, as a Man United fan. It's his first full season. They want to see energy. They want to see commitment. All of these things were not present last season, it's fair to say. If I was a United fan, yes, I'd be encouraged in terms of my kind of overarching feeling. But I think I'd be a little bit frustrated as well because, you know, you can say that they were better and they were, but Arsenal were really poor.
Yeah.
Really poor. And you've lost. And that can't be something that you're happy with walking away from Old Trafford. It just can't be. I thought the atmosphere was good. The Man United fans were behind their team. You can't knock them for that. Even when they went a goal down, they were really behind them. So there's a positivity in the air at Old Trafford, and I think that will serve them well, but they've still got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, they have, indeed. Maybe a bit of work to do in that transfer window as well. I think maybe, you know, there's been a lot of talk about it, but they needed, I think, an extra engine in midfield and of course, that goalkeeping situation. I mean, it's looking as if they might stick with Andre Onana, which I just think would be a mistake. You've got to go out there and try and get a goalkeeper that's going to be more commanding in the box, a better shot stopper, and good with their feet as well. And there's a couple about that they could maybe chase down. Anyway, let's talk about some of the other title rivals for Arsenal. Liverpool, probably game of the weekend for me on that Friday night. What a game to kick off the season. 4-2 in the end. Look, you know, a last minute winner from Chiesa, and then Salah putting the icing on the cake. As much as it was a very good attacking performance, though, from Liverpool, what did you make of their backline?
Yeah, it didn't look great, did it? Yeah, I think a big part of that was Konate. I'd kind of been very focused going into the season when discussing Liverpool on the fact that they've got two new fullbacks and that's going to take a bit of time to get it right.
But Konate was on skates at times.
He was awful. He was that's as bad as I've ever seen him play. And obviously, you know, you're talking about the fullbacks. They got to form those partnerships with the centre backs, and they got to understand each other's game and all that. You know, that's always going to take time. But to be that vulnerable in the heart of the defence, like, you can only look at Konate. He just wasn't good enough. A lot of Liverpool fans telling me that sort of when Gravenberch comes back, they won't be so difficult to play through. I'm not sure that Gravenberch fixes what we're seeing right now, which is
Liverpool. He did have a good season last time out, though.
He did, but he's not a DM, is he? Like, he's not really a DM. He's a ball player that has ended up playing further back because Liverpool needed him to, and he fit into that role quite well. But that was because Liverpool had real good stability around him. And if they don't, if Konate's form continues in this vein, if the fullbacks take a bit more time to kind of get up to speed from a defensive standpoint, then there's going to be a hell of a lot of pressure on Ryan Gravenberch to be a real kind of defensive staple for Liverpool. I worry about them defensively a little bit.
Yeah, it was interesting hearing Arne Slot talk before this game even about the fact that when he came in as a new manager, he felt pressure, but not as much pressure because the players, at least, were the same. This time around, as much as it looks like they've had a fantastic transfer window and they've brought in some very talented players, you've still got to bed them in. You've still got to teach them the system. And actually, you know, when you look at that game, do you sit there and think, well, Liverpool have got to get this right and got to get it right quickly? Because if you're in a title race with Manchester City, who we'll talk about in just a moment, and Arsenal, there's not many games where you can afford to drop points or lose games. They've got Newcastle away up next, which is going to be emotionally charged. You know, Liverpool have got to get this right quickly. They've got to try and make sure that their players are up to speed.
Yeah, they do. They need to fix it, and I'm confident they will fix it. But the hope is, I guess, from a rival fan perspective, that you can make a bit of a dent in their title hopes even at this really early stage in the season.
If only Newcastle had an amazing number 9 they could play in that game and run Virgil van Dijk and Konate ragged. Oh well. What about Manchester City? 4-0 win for them. And you know, have we slept on them a bit? You know, as much as everyone's kind of said you can't rule out Manchester City, no one's really been hammering them home as potential favourites. You know, they've almost for most pundits, I would say, have been maybe coming third this season. Such was their drop off last time around. Is that a dangerous prediction to make, especially aside with so many players that have won a title before?
Yeah, because, they dropped off last season, but the second half of the season was pretty good. They didn't end up finishing that far behind Arsenal in the end. which I think people seem to have forgotten. They've done a lot of good business over the summer. They did some good business in January, and that business they did in January has had time in terms of those adaptations that are required. I think Man City are right up there. You know, they've got the best striker in the league. They've got the best manager in the league, maybe ever. They've got so much going for them still. This
when
idea,
he's fit, best central defensive player in Rodri.
Yeah.
Tijani Reinders looks all right, doesn't he?
Oh, mate, what a player.
He looks pretty good.
Unbelievable player.
Oh, my word. He was outstanding in that game.
He's fantastic. He is Kevin De Bruyne with legs. You know, Kevin De Bruyne, his powers waned because he couldn't get about the pitch anymore the same way, but he always had that technical brilliance, the vision. Reinders has got all of that. And he's got the ability to get around the pitch, to buzz around, to win the ball back. He's just a top player. I've been a massive fan of his for such a long time. I was gutted when City got him because I really thought that he'd go on and sort of blow up in the Premier League, and it feels like it's heading that way.
Are you going to call it right now, Harry Symeou? I'll put you on the spot. Will he be the signing of the summer?
100%. I don't think it's even debatable. I think come the end of the season, I think he's going to be up there for Player of the Year, let alone the best signing.
You wait till Johan Wissa joins Newcastle, mate. You wait. Olly Clink alongside Harry Symeou, who bumped into Ben White at a service station after Arsenal's win at Old Trafford. How about that? Amazing. Amazing.
It's completely out of the blue.
What book did he buy? You mentioned he bought a book.
I have no idea what the book was. I didn't look. I didn't look.
Tanning 101, yeah.
I was just really excited that Ben White was standing in front of me. I wasn't really interested in the book, to be honest. I only noticed it in the picture afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, nice. There we go. Do you reckon he was watching Match of the Day later that night? Probably not.
Not a big fan of football, does he?
Let's carry on reflecting on the Premier League weekend then. Tottenham with a commanding win over a Burnley side who already look like they could be relegation fodder this season. And they've lost some really important players, Burnley, that were so key to being defensively solid last season. Egan Riley went to Marseille. Obviously, James Trafford has gone to Manchester City as well, and there were real signs of that. So, fairly easy start for Tottenham. Brilliant performance from Richarlison, who it seems like Thomas Frank is getting the best out of. And it looks like his ideas so far are working.
Yeah, I mean, what he's shown, I think, so far, Thomas Frank, is that he's going to be adaptable. He's not going to do an Ange Postecoglou and say, this is who we are, mate, and play the same way with the same players every single week. I know Postecoglou had injury problems last season and he couldn't always stick with the same team, but I feel like Thomas Frank showed us against PSG one face of his Tottenham side, and then he showed us something different against Burnley. So maybe that adaptability is going to be the difference. Maybe that is going to see Tottenham be much more competitive and be in and around the European places, which is where I'd imagine they'd want to be this season. But still early days. There's a pressure at Tottenham that Thomas Frank would have never experienced before. We know that, if it's not going your way and you've got 60,000 people on top of you, it can get a bit much. People have a preconception about Tottenham that leads to certain types of questioning when they fail and when they don't get things over the line. Ange Postecoglou didn't react to that very well. I think Thomas Frank will be better at that side of things. Yeah. But he's got a lot to learn as well. He's done brilliantly so far in his career, but he's not had a job of this size. Yeah,
that's very true. And do you know what? It makes their next game really interesting. Away at Manchester City, where, by the way, this feels like an age ago, but that's actually where they won 4-0 last season. I mean, that result feels incredibly strange given how Tottenham's season, despite the fact they won a trophy, turned out and they finished 17th. But I completely agree with the fact that Frank, I think, will be a lot more adaptable. He's actually had a good record at Brentford against some of those bigger teams as well. He'd beaten Man City away before with Brentford. So having kind of had a soft landing with that Burnley game, I think heading into that test is going to be really interesting for Spurs. Do you think maybe the fact that they were under Ange and as we know he was quite stubborn about what he wanted from his team and like you say, it's who we are, mate, etc. Do you think maybe that made us forget that there is quality within that Tottenham squad? I mean, even today we've had Romero signing a new contract, etc. Like, there's some decent players in there for sure.
Yeah, there is, and that's why the job Ange Postecoglou did was so poor that he ended up getting sacked for it. I know he won a trophy, but ultimately their league form was completely unacceptable. Thomas Frank has already shown Tottenham fans that with the right adjustments and with the right tweaks, and as you say, they've got some talent within the squad, they can compete with even Europe's best. Now, I know PSG had just come back for pre-season and they had an extended break and they weren't quite at the same fitness levels, but Tottenham competed. Yes, they lost in the end, but they competed with the best team in Europe. And so that proves in itself that if you set up right, you can go a long way in nullifying opposition. And Ange Postecoglou was completely unwilling to do that. Thomas Frank will do that. Whether he'll be too pragmatic for the Tottenham fans, I'm not sure yet, because they always say, we've got to play the Tottenham way, to dare is to do and all that rubbish. But, there might be a point where they look at him and they go, it's a little bit too much leaning that way. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to say. The thing is, if you get results over the line, I think they'll be absolutely fine with it. Even though we have seen before that the times under Conte and Mourinho, the football was so bad that things started to get a little bit toxic. Let's talk about Chelsea 0, Crystal Palace 0. Harry, there was a lot of talk about Chelsea and the fact that they had the Club World Cup but not a proper pre-season. And for me, felt like a bit of a sluggish performance. I thought Palace played really well once again. And actually, we're unlucky not to win it because of an absolutely ridiculous call on VAR, in my opinion. Not necessarily because it goes against the laws, but what really frustrates me is the fact that this season we were told, no, it really will just be for clear and obvious. Not one Chelsea player appealed that Mark Gahey was that close to the wall, a law that I only found out about this weekend, a law that I have not seen implemented at all. I was literally at a game at Stamford Bridge where Reece James scored in the final minute against Bournemouth. You watch the highlights of that, there's plenty of Chelsea players right next to the wall. You know what made me laugh the most was that the referee, after that call had been made, then started using his magic spray to mark out a metre away from the wall. It looked like they were making it up as they went along. And once again, it's just getting involved when it doesn't need to be and cancelling goals for no reason. It was so frustrating. And I think Chelsea should feel very lucky that they weren't 1-0 down in that situation.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like you, I wasn't aware of that law. Either. I was listening to the Chelsea game as I was heading up to Old Trafford. And about 15, 20 minutes into that game, when Manchester United had a free kick on the edge of the box, the referee got the magic spray out, as you said, and he marked out a metre from the wall. And I just laughed because I thought, if that Eze incident didn't happen earlier in the day, you're not doing that. You're just not doing it. And it feels like we get this every season, right? The PGMOL sit down over the summer and they conspire about how they can ruin football even more. And they come up with some kind of nonsense. They go through the law book. They dig out some law that's never implemented, that's hiding in the shadows, and they go, right, beginning of the season, this is our focus. A month down the line, it will disappear. We saw it last season with kicking the ball away. Arsenal were on the wrong end of that on numerous occasions, and then it never got punished again over the course of the campaign. So they do this all the time. Do you remember it was that year where they were penalising pulling from set pieces and just giving penalties for fun? And then that died out because everyone realised how ridiculous it was. We'll have the same thing happen this time. It's boring.
It is so boring. It's so boring. And like I say, you didn't have Chelsea players streaming around the referee because they felt it was an injustice. It was simply, let's be honest, jobs worth refereeing.
Yep, exactly.
And it's just so frustrating that those moments get taken away from fans. We end up with a goalless draw. A goal at that point might have made that game even more exciting. So, yeah, a huge frustration there. And there'll be people saying that they're following the letter of the law. But at the same time, come on, guys. Like, not one football fan watched that and went, oh, no, hold on. Oh, no, Mark Gahey was way too close to the wall. Not a single one, I guarantee you, other than the people in Stockley Park. Incredibly frustrating, that one. So in that sense, do you think that Chelsea did get away with one in that game? Could they actually, I just felt they were really lacking in attack, really lacking any creativity at times, and it feels like that lack of pre-season did maybe catch up with them a bit.
Yeah, I felt they were a bit passive. I didn't see the game in full, obviously, because I was travelling, as I said, up to Old Trafford. But I listened to it and I saw the highlights, and the impression I got was that they were a little bit passive and just not really quite at it. In terms of whether what happened over the summer, the Club World Cup, and then having that break at the timing they did, if that's had an impact, if it has, I'm surprised. Because I'd have thought that this is something that would have caught up with Chelsea later on in the season. I wouldn't have thought it would be an issue for them now. So I'm a little bit surprised that they were as toothless as they were. But I still think Chelsea will do more business before the window ends, and I still think they're in good shape to make the top 4. So I wouldn't panic if I was a Chelsea fan.
Yeah. By the way, one more thing on that. I can't let it go. I can
see in your
goal.
eyes that
I'm so annoyed about it.
Deeply hurt by it.
So ridiculous. But one thing I just want to say as well is that you might think, oh no, hold on, was that law brought in at the start of this season? No, it's 2019. So just in case you might think that, the referee in the Manchester United game was doing it because it's new for this season. It's not. So they've clearly had a very good study of the rules and implemented them in a very frustrated way. So I can't let it go, mate.
How can we make everybody believe that we've been doing something over the summer?
Yeah, exactly.
How can we look like we're improving things?
Yeah, you're not.
You're not, exactly.
So annoying. Let's have a quick chat about another goalless draw, Aston Villa against Newcastle. I thought Newcastle were the better side, should have won, which actually, to be honest, given how the summer's played out, given that we have no proper number 9 up front because of the Isak situation, I would have taken it, put it that way. I would have taken it, and actually leaving the game, being frustrated that we hadn't gone on to win at Villa Park, where famously we don't do that well. It's not the worst start. You're off the mark.
No, absolutely. From a Newcastle perspective, you've had a lot of noise in the background. You've got a lot of uncertainty still surrounding the club because you guys need to bring in a striker. You're going to lose a striker by the looks of it, or you're going to be stuck with one whose value is going to be tanking on a daily basis because he's seemingly refusing to play. Eddie Howe would have been pleased that his side went out and put in a performance because it shows that they've got that ability to kind of block out what's going on around them. Didn't get the result that you'd wanted in terms of getting all 3 points, but if you're a Newcastle fan, I think you should be proud of that performance at least.
Yeah.
Didn't get the outcome, but you got the point, a solid point, and they showed everybody that regardless of what's happening, it's not really seeping into the current group.
Yeah, I think the frustration is that if Isak plays in that game, Newcastle definitely win. There were chances there that he would have gobbled up, or even most number 9s would have gobbled up because Newcastle were creating very good situations, just didn't have a natural forward. I thought Gordon actually played well and did all the other side of that role very well, but he, just not a natural player to be able to finish off some of those chances. Can I ask you something though on the Isak situation? Because it's looking, we haven't got that long left of this window now, and there doesn't seem to be much movement from that Liverpool side, right? If you were a Newcastle fan, Harry, yeah. I know that's not something you want to think about, of course, but if you were a Newcastle fan and Isak comes back, do you celebrate his goals?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, of course you do.
Do you let the first two go? Let the first two go and then celebrate?
No, I mean...
Because you're celebrating for your team, aren't you?
Yeah, you're celebrating for your team. You're not celebrating for the player. You're celebrating for your team. You need the goals. I think you're going to have to find a way as Newcastle fans, if he does stay, to put to one side what's just gone on. Because I think, again, it's easy for me to say because I'm not a Newcastle fan, but I do think that you guys as a supporter base acknowledge that he's been made some promises that have been broken. I'm not saying that he should be allowed to leave based on a gentleman's agreement and all that nonsense, because if it's not on paper, it ain't an agreement, and you're an idiot if you allowed your career to be dictated by someone's word that's now left the club, right? But I do think that for the good of Newcastle United, you've got to find a way of putting this to one side and at least sympathising with his side of the argument. Whether you agree with it or not is another thing. But maybe that's the way that you get him back into the team. Maybe Eddie Howe has to say, look, I get it, okay? I understand it, but it's not within my power. You don't want to sit around and do nothing in a World Cup year. We don't want you to sit around and do nothing. You're not going to get your move if you just go on strike. You're giving a really bad sort of opinion of yourself out to everybody. You've got to sort it out. We've got to sort it out. Let's move forward. Maybe that's the only way. Bit of sympathy.
Yeah, get your boots on, son. Come on.
Yeah.
Get your boots on.